Hello, I'm Patrick McNee, John Steed in The Avengers. Welcome to A&E Home Videos, the best of the original Avengers. Part of the ultimate collections. The Avengers began production in 1960. Yes, 1960. It was a brainchild of a wonderful man, a Canadian called Sidney Newman. In this collection, we pick up with the show's second season, when Secret Agent Steed was first teamed with a woman, the actress Honor Blackman. The character, Mrs. Catherine Gale. In her own inimitable way, Honor created Cathy, this sophisticated, action-oriented character, by more or less playing a man's part, meaning she played it with the toughness of a man, but she was undeniably a woman. Cathy Gale had become a symbol of the jet-age woman, television's first liberated lady. The series quickly became the most fashionable and talked about show on British television. Then Honor dropped her bombshell. She was leaving. She was leaving us to do the James Bond film, Goldfinger. The question was, who could replace Honor Blackman? We discovered Diana Rigg, Dame Diana Rigg, as she now is, who created Mrs. Emma Peel. And the rest, as they say, is history. During Diana Rigg's time with us, the Avengers premiered in the US and made the bold jump from black and white into color. Indeed, it was such an exciting time that we devoted an entire collection to the best of Mrs. Emma Peel. In late 1967, Diana Rigg would move on to pursue other projects. Auditions to find her replacement spanned several months. I filmed a short character sketch with 3 young actresses that was viewed by a distinguished panel of ABC TV executives. Their decision was unanimous. Linda Thorson would play Steed's new partner, Miss Tara King. Just 20 at the time, Linda brought the natural exuberance and vigor of youth to the series. Tara's innocence put me in the position of being the hero. Her knight in shining armor, which I'd never been before. I'd been slightly subservient to the women.
Okay.
Well received in England, the show picked up consistently high ratings wherever it played, everywhere but in America, where the network scheduled the show opposite Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, at the time the most popular show on the networks. Faced with such formidable opposition, our ratings tumbled. We had nowhere to go but down. The Avengers had appeared, no longer socked it to them. Noble in defeat, producer Brian Clemens chose to end the show by having Tara and Steed marooned on a rocket in outer space. A stroke of genius when you think about it. What goes up must come down, eventually. The episodes in this collection represent 6 of the best featuring Steed's partners, Cathy Gale, Emma Peel, and Tara King. They serve to highlight all that is best about the Avengers: tradition, humanity, character, sexuality, bizarre comic strip action, and witty, tongue-in-cheek humor, still fresh and invigorating. The show has aged little with the passage of time. Enjoy now the best of the original Avengers. Martin Woodhouse, author of the whimsically titled Mr. Teddy Bear, was an untested writer when he came to us. His story ideas proved so interesting, though, that he went on to write half a dozen more episodes. In this one, Mrs. Gale arranges to have John Steed assassinated by Mr. Teddy Bear, a man who sells his talent for killing to anyone who can meet his asking price. It's a ruse to enable Cathy to track the killer to his lair. But the plan misfires and Cathy becomes the next victim of Mr. Teddy Bear's hit list. Enter Steed to save the day and fair lady.
Why aren't you dead?
An ending I argued against at the time, preferring to have Steed arrive but for Kathy to turn the tables on her oppressor. After all, Kathy Gale hardly needed rescuing. Honor's first leather outfit, the one she wears here, had to be green, black being difficult to light in the studio. When lighting techniques improved, she wore the real thing, jet black leather. Network television was never the same. Written by Brian Clemens, the guiding genius behind the film series, Don't Look Behind You is a wonderful story. Mrs. Gale is placed at the mercy of forces she doesn't understand and has no control over. The all-prevailing sense of menace that threatens her is all the more terrifying because, as directed by Peter Hammond, the suspense never lets up. By far and away the best director of his time, Peter Hammond single-handedly set the style and look of the Avengers. Innovative shots were Peter's speciality. He'd say, "Would you just stand just there, Patrick?" Which meant that he had lined you up with some extraordinary object. A shot coming in through a keyhole, through the bowl of a brandy glass, things like that, but always done with tremendous visual flair. Magnificent director. Incidentally, this story was remade as the Joker during the Diana Rigg color season. It's debatable which version is better. The Avengers was always ahead of its time. For example, we had answer phones and computers, laser beams and robots on the show in the mid-60s. In 1965, when Death at Bargain Prices premiered in the UK, network television was still a modest babe in the woods. But writer Brian Clemens and director Charles Crichton always knew how to stir things up. In this episode, Mrs. Peel goes undercover as a department store clerk, working in lingerie. Undercover indeed. Such innuendo was above and beyond anything on television at the time. Daring, modern, and wonderfully entertaining. Death at Bargain Prices offers some of the Avengers' most memorable dialogue and outstanding direction. Service, please. Charming. It's Christmas, a time of peace on earth and goodwill to all men. That's the way things are supposed to be. The villains of the piece in Too Many Christmas Trees have other ideas. Amid the holly and the ivy, they are hatching a nightmarish plot to drive Steed to the brink of madness and unlock state secrets from his unbalanced mind. As dark and brooding as any episode we made, this story beautifully sums up the unique, cool, sophisticated style of the Avengers. No matter how great the menace facing Steed and Mrs. Peel, the action was played always with a deft, delicate touch and tongue planted firmly in cheek, leaving the viewer in no doubt at all that the Avengers was a parody of the thriller formula, a spoof not to be taken too seriously. Early in the story, Steed receives a Christmas card from Kathy, a reference, of course, to ex-partner Mrs. Kathy Gale, played by Honor Blackman, who left the series to play Pussy Galore in the Bond film Goldfinger. What can she be doing in Fort Knox? Steed wonders. Delightful. Look, stop me if you've heard this one, but there were these two fellas. Sums up all that is best about the Avengers. Take the story premise: retired music hall artists committing murder and departing the scene of the crime. Dancing. I mean, it's outrageous, but gloriously entertaining. The fight between Mary Maxie Martin and Steed, with its multiplicity of costume changes, is one of the best and most hilarious fights ever filmed for the Avengers. Marvelously orchestrated, and the only fitting way, I thought, to treat violence. In fact, you'll notice that Steed hardly ever carried a gun. After 5 years in the Second World War, I'd seen quite enough gunfire. Beautifully directed by James Hill. Look, Stop Me is hysterical, but it's heartless. Punch and Judy, it has a sort of hard undertow there, all at once. Oh, and look for John Cleese, better known as part of Monty Python's Flying Circus and a good many other things, let's face it, who gives a superb performance in this episode. I love it. Steed suspected of leaking secrets. That's the premise of All Done with Mirrors, which finds our hero placed under house arrest by Mother, suspected of leaking secrets to the enemy. And there lay the rub. I felt that bringing the Mother character into the picture destroyed the mystery. It became very boring having Steed report to this man, just to be sent off on his mission. For many of the Honor Blackman shows, and always during the Diana Rigg shows, we were just there, at the scene. It didn't have to be explained how we got there. So this ridiculous business with Mother left me cold. Paddy Newell, I'm bound to say, was a delightful, self-effacing, deeply interesting chap. We grew very fond of each other during the production, but Mother bored the pants off me. Nevertheless, Mother's arresting Steed in All Done with Mirrors allowed Linda Thorson, and she was so lovely, to shine especially bright as Tara King on a solo mission in Beachy Head, or at least a Steedless mission.